Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for the Oregon Employment Department's monthly media briefing. I'm going to give everybody just a couple more minutes to join us. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Rebecca Gibson King. I am the Communications Director for the Oregon Employment Department. Today's speakers are Oregon Employment Department's State Employment Economist, Gail Krumenauer, Oregon Employment Department Director, David Gerstenfeld, and then we have Paid Leave Oregon Director, Karen Madden-Hummelbaugh, and Unemployment Insurance Director, Lindsay Leahy, on hand to answer questions after the opening remarks. Couple of quick notes. This call is being recorded and we will post the recording online and send out the link to everyone who RSVP'd after the briefing. We will take questions after the opening remarks. And as always, if you have any technical difficulties or are otherwise unable to get your question answered today, please send us an email at communications@employ.oregon.gov and we will be happy to answer those questions or assist you with anything else you need. I will now turn it over to State Employment Economist, Gail Krumenauer. Go ahead, Gail.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Rebecca. Thanks, everybody, for joining us this afternoon. Yesterday, the Oregon Employment Department released the latest jobs numbers and unemployment rate for April. Oregon employers added 1,200 jobs to non-farm payrolls in April. Leisure and hospitality had the largest gain, adding 3,300 jobs over the month. That was tied to a larger than expected ramp up in seasonal hiring. The largest loss occurred in transportation, warehousing, and utilities, which dropped 1,300 jobs over the month. This sector includes long-distance trucking, delivery companies, and the large storage warehouses we typically see along Oregon's major highways. Looking at the past year, Oregon employers added 16,400 jobs. That was a gain of slightly less than 1%, which is pretty slow by historical standards. Private healthcare and social assistance had 14,700 jobs added over the past year, which was a gain of nearly 5%. Now, on the other hand, several sectors had notable losses. Manufacturing declined by 5,200 jobs over the year. Financial activities lost 2,900 jobs, and construction was down by 2,800 jobs over the year. Newly revised data for the second half of 2024 was also released yesterday and showed slower growth in Oregon than we originally estimated. Oregon employers added a total of just 2,800 jobs in the last 6 months of 2024. That's an average monthly gain of about 500 jobs from July through December. Switching to Oregon's unemployment rate, the unemployment rate was 4.7% in April. That was slightly higher than the US rate of 4.2%. So far in 2025, we've seen Oregon's unemployment rate tick up by 0.1 of a percentage point each month. And while that's little change in any one given month, we do see the effect is a little bit more over time. Oregon's unemployment rate was 4.3% in December and is up to 4.7% as of April. Labor force participation has remained stable, though. We've seen that for the past 6 months, the labor force participation rate has been 62.7%, and that's the highest rate since October of 2012. Overall, the big picture with employment and unemployment numbers is a bit mixed. Job growth has continued in Oregon, but it's been slow and highly concentrated in one sector of the economy rather than seeing broad-based job gains. Unemployment is still pretty low in Oregon. However, the unemployment rate has been trending up and is now 1.1 percentage points above the most recent low that we saw in the spring of 2023. With that, I will hand it over to Director David Gerstenfeld for more comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. Hello, everyone. I'm sad to share that this will be my final Oregon Employment Department media briefing. Last week, I was confirmed by the Oregon Senate to be the next director of the Department of Revenue. I'm replacing Betsy Imholt, who was confirmed as the new director for the Department of Administrative Services. The Senate also confirmed Andrew Stolfi, who is currently the director at the Department of Consumer and Business Services, to be my successor here at the Employment Department. We'll all assume our new roles next month. I've spent more than 28 years in public service working for the state of Oregon. Besides the last 5 years as the director of the Employment Department, this has included other roles here, including leading the unemployment insurance program and starting the process of building the Paid Leave Oregon program. Before that, I spent many years as an administrative law judge and presiding administrative law judge. And before that, I had several roles doing enforcement and education work for the Bureau of Labor and Industries. Throughout my tenure with the state, I've done my best to ensure the people of Oregon are treated fairly, with dignity and respect, and in a way that fosters faith in their government. I'm excited to continue doing that while leading the Department of Revenue and helping that agency thrive. I'll miss my team here at the Employment Department, but I know it is in good hands with my dedicated and talented colleagues and with Andrew Stolfi's skilled leadership. I'm extremely proud of the work we've done at the Employment Department as we navigated the biggest challenge unemployment insurance systems across the nation have seen since they were first formed after the Great Depression. In 2020 alone, the Oregon Employment Department paid out more unemployment insurance benefits than in the entire prior decade. We've made real, long-lasting improvements in customer service, while also creating and launching the new Paid Leave Oregon program, which has already paid more than $1 billion in benefits to more than 135,000 people who needed help during some of life's most important moments. We've implemented the nation's most comprehensively integrated combined employer payroll tax reporting system, launched the technology supporting Paid Leave Oregon benefits, and the long-needed modernized unemployment insurance benefit system. We completed this integrated series of technology launches on time and under budget, and we're now working on modernizing our workforce operations programs. The department still faces some challenges, such as a lack of adequate federal funding, the evolving nature of the workforce and its needs, and not having pre-existing emergency unemployment programs that can be quickly turned on during a major recession. Instead, we have to build them from the ground up each time. But the people here at the Employment Department are exceptionally skilled and exceptionally dedicated to doing everything possible to help the public. They're well suited to focusing on customer service and innovating to better serve Oregonians, and I'm excited to see them continue their great work under Andrew's leadership. My time at the Employment Department has taught me many things, including how to be a wise and conscientious steward of public funds, being as efficient as possible while providing the best possible customer service, and I'm looking forward to using these skills at the Department of Revenue. I recognize the critical role the Department of Revenue plays, collecting the money the state uses to support people and communities all throughout Oregon. I'm looking forward to this opportunity and honor to serve Oregonians, and I look forward to working with the people on this call in my new position. And now I'm going to turn things over to Rebecca to open up the floor for any questions.
Thanks, David. We're now going to open the lines to members of the media to ask questions. If you're joining us by phone, please make sure to hit *6 to unmute yourself. As a courtesy, please limit yourself to one question and one follow-up question. And if you don't get your question answered today, please email us at communications@employ.oregon.gov. And I see we have a first hand raised from Kyra Buckley with OPB, and I am allowing you to talk. Go ahead, Kyra.
Hello, can you all hear me okay? Oh, I love it when it works the first time. Thanks so much. David, thank you for your time at the department and for being willing to continually answer our questions on these calls. Very much appreciated. I don't have to tell you, my question is for you, and I don't have to tell you that we are in, well, we are always in uncertain times. Things are specifically uncertain, speaking to the economy. I'm wondering what you want the folks of Oregon to know about how the employment department could handle a potential surge in unemployment claims should we go into a recession.
That's a great question, Kyron. We've really done a lot of great work, and the agency has made a ton of improvements that let us be much more agile. I'll highlight a few of those, and then where there are still some risks, and I talked about a couple of those in my comments, but the Francis technology, while we're still getting more adept at fine-tuning it, it is much more adaptable. It's much easier for us to make changes in that system. One of the challenges we had during the pandemic was you hire a bunch of people because there's a sudden need for more people to process claims. Training people how to use our old green screen technology was very difficult. Our programs are still very complicated, so that still takes time, but the new technology does speed up that onboarding process. Probably most importantly, I think several parts of the agency have gotten really good at working together and working differently in terms of how we communicate with the public, how we get the feedback from the public, and then quickly make those adjustments to how we operate. So I think that we are in a good position to do that. I'll point out that prior to the pandemic, the Oregon Employment Department had put together a plan for dealing with economic cycles, for what to do when a recession hits. And it was a plan that was copied and built upon by a whole bunch of other states across the nation. It's something that we looked at. It's a really solid plan. It was not intended for the pandemic, where it was so sudden and so severe. So we have gone back and added to it from what we learned during the pandemic. But we think that overall we're in a good place to deal with kind of a typical recession, which may not feel typical to the people who are unemployed, but it's the type of thing that our agency and employees are really able to deal with well. The challenges that we have, I mentioned one is that usually if there's a big recession, the federal government creates some kind of temporary unemployment program. We and other states have been advocating to have a pre-existing set of temporary programs so that we can have them ready to just turn on. That hasn't happened. So if there is a big recession, it's pretty likely Congress will create a new type of program that the employment department will have to build and then launch in a really compressed timeline. The other thing is that federal funding. Right now, the federal funding continues to go down, even as the need for services goes up and the cost of providing services goes up. So there are those risks. We're talking to the state legislature about those. What I feel very proud of and comfortable with is that the employment department has done amazing work, and the things that are within the direct control of the employment department, and even most things that are within the direct control of any part of the state of Oregon, are in a vastly better shape than they were before. And I think that we're well prepared to communicate with people and to ramp up services to help them through difficult times.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. And then Gail, I'm wondering if you could reflect a little bit more, instead of asking you to look into the future, since we don't have that crystal ball. I am wondering though, if you can tell me a little bit more insight into the second half of 2024 numbers. I think you mentioned that it was about 500 jobs per month growth. Can you just talk a little bit more about where that job growth did happen and any other insights you had looking at that data?
Yes, thank you, Kyra. I wanted to mention it's not exactly 500 jobs a month. That's just what it averages out to. There were certainly months with gains and some with declines during that period that we see in the revisions. What we saw is that construction came in a little bit weaker than we thought. Private healthcare and social assistance has really just been the consistent story. That's where the bulk of the job growth has been in Oregon. Oregon's not alone in that trend either. We're seeing that private healthcare and social assistance is also leading job growth nationally. So even though the numbers changed and slowed a bit, the big picture still significantly looks the same as it did before in terms of private healthcare and social assistance really accounting for most of the job growth in Oregon.
Great. Thanks for taking my questions. And David, best of luck at the Department of Revenue.
Thanks, Carmen. Thank you for your coverage and help getting the word out about the work that the employment department does. Appreciate.
All right, then. Next up is Brad Ford with KEX. Go ahead, Brad.
Yeah, David, this is for you. I know that you're limited on what you can say concerning fraud attempts, so I'll try to ask these in a way that hopefully you can answer. I've got a couple of questions here, and I won't throw them all at you at one time. Let's start with the first one here. How would you assess the number of fraud attempts now compared to before the pandemic?
It's higher, is the short answer. There have always been some types of fraud attempts. What we saw during the pandemic with the big creation of lots of extra federal programs, more dollars, and a lot of other factors that just made it more of a target. We see a persisting, really elevated level of fraud attacks and complex schemes to do fraud attacks from people within Oregon, from people from other parts of the nation, and from international actors. And unfortunately, it looks like that's something that is here to stay.
Now, you implemented new methods to verify identities of customers to reduce the amount of fraud. Are those successful?
Largely, yes. And you're right. I'm going to be very cautious about what I say because we're really careful to not weaken those protections that we work so hard to put into place. Oregon has done, we've paid a lot of attention to that identity verification. It's crucial to combat the fraud that goes on. Some of those schemes that we see, some of those really complex ones, involve organizations using identities that have been stolen in data breaches of other organizations. So any of them that you read about in the paper, and they use that stolen information to try to steal unemployment benefits. We have to balance the work to protect people's accounts by verifying their identity with trying to still make it as easy as possible for people to access their benefits. It's constantly evolving. We are constantly seeing new types of attacks and changes in the behavior of those fraud rings, and we're constantly adjusting what we do. And with all of that said, Oregon has been quite successful at quickly identifying and stopping those fraud attacks without having the scale of losses that unfortunately some other state unemployment programs have seen.
I understand why you haven't been able to give out numbers, but I'm going to ask this anyway. Will we ever be able to get numbers about the amount of fraud, maybe during the pandemic, now that several years have passed, or how much of that money has been recovered?
Sure, we are publishing some information. We intentionally wait until it is relatively stale, frankly, because if we give out fresh information, it can help inform those fraud rings of what we're doing, how much we identified. And since they know what they were doing and how much of it, it can help them hone their attacks. And that's the type of evolving behavior that we see from them. But we are annually releasing a fraud report that reports on some of the fraud activity that took place in the past. So we are doing that. We started doing that partway through the pandemic and have continued to do that since then. So I don't have the link offhand, but that's something we can certainly follow up with a link to that report.
Yeah, we'll put that link in the recording when we email that out to everyone who RSVP'd.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to give anybody, the other reporters who are on this call, the chance to raise their hand or unmute if you're on the phone. Okay, then I am going to then draw this media briefing to a close. As a reminder, this call was recorded and we will send out the link to all of the reporters who RSVP'd. We will then post it on the media page at employment.oregon.gov under public engagement. And thank you for participating today and for your partnership to keep Oregonians informed. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.